Hello and welcome to this video designed to help you gain some easy extra marks for your writing by using punctuation and some paragraphing. First of all, let's have a look at what the mark scheme says. This is the mark scheme for paper 1, spelling, punctuation and grammar. There are 5 bands in all, level 5 being the top, roughly corresponding to an 8 or a 9. Level 3 corresponds to a 4 or a 5. Each level has 3 bullet points that the examiners look at, and they're basically the same point, you're just doing the same thing better to get better marks. If we look at the third bullet point in that level 3, we'll see, uses accurate and varied punctuation. Now, this tells us that using punctuation accurately is not enough for the examiners. That would only get you half the marks available, maybe 9 out of 18. To get those higher marks, we need to use punctuation for effect. And this is just for paper 1. There are potentially maybe 10 marks going missing if you don't consider this. And there are another 6 possible extra marks available on paper 2 with exactly the same criteria. And it's those marks that this video is targeting. And it's not hard. Now, here is some punctuation that you should already know. If you don't, then do some self-study. Make sure you've got these punctuation essentials in your toolkit. A word of warning, don't overdo the commas. In this video, we'll see some alternatives. Also, please don't overdo the exclamation marks. Not everything has to be exciting. Sparing use is generally better. And 1 per line is sufficient. Adding 4 or 5 exclamation marks just makes you look desperate. Unless that's the effect you're going for, it's best to avoid it. Finally, please do use full stops. So, once you've got these, here are some extra things to consider. We've got ellipsis, ... colon, a dot above a dot, and semicolon, a dot above a comma. We've got a dash, also known as the M dash, and we've got paragraphing, and like I said, not exactly punctuation, but we'll bundle it together. We're going to focus on these 5 features, and we're going to see how some of the great writers in the past have used them. And then we're just going to steal their ideas, some of the ones that you like. First up, James Joyce. A silence took possession of the room, little room, and under cover of it, I approached the table and tasted my sherry, and then returned quietly to my chair in the corner. Eliza seemed to have fallen into a deep reverie. We waited respectfully for her to break the silence. And after a long pause, she said slowly, "It was that chalice he broke. That was the beginning of it. Of course, they say it was all right, that it contained nothing. I mean, but still. They say it was the boy's fault. But poor James was so nervous. God be merciful to him." "And was that it?" said my aunt. "I heard something." Eliza nodded. Now you probably spotted them. We've got ellipsis and colon, both being used here. And the ellipsis is there to show that the characters are trailed off and are thinking. This use of ellipsis is one that you can easily replicate, and it works. It's probably better using it for the characters in dialogue than for your own narrator's thoughts, unless you want to establish the narrator as a character. The colons are more straightforward. In this case, as is often the case, a colon is used to amplify whatever comes before it. You can think of this as an arrow pointing towards further information, or perhaps as a silent "as follows." This latter case being almost exactly what the colon does when you use it to introduce a list. Of these 2 techniques, ellipsis or colon, which do you think is more likely to achieve a particular effect on the reader? I think it's the ellipsis, with that pausing giving you the impression of doubt. Let's have a look at another example. In this passage from Gaiman and Pratchett, we have 2 old friends, or possibly enemies, chatting. Crawley is a demon, and Aziraphale is an angel. Eventually, Crawley said, "Didn't you have a flaming sword?" Said the angel. A guilty expression passed across his face, and then came back and camped there. "You did, didn't you?" said Crawley. "It flamed like anything." Well, it looked very impressive, I thought." "Yes, but, well, lost it, have you?" "Oh, no, not exactly lost. More, well..." Aziraphale looked wretched. "If you must know," he said a trifle testily, "I gave it away." Now, I'm sure you spotted the M dash. This is an extremely useful bit of punctuation, as it's almost impossible to use it incorrectly. It can be used in place of the semicolons, commas, even brackets. And in this case, it's doing a similar job to the ellipsis in the previous example, but to me, this suggests interruptions, that the demon is cutting the angel off because he's taking too long to answer. It's really quite effective. And again, it's really easy. And once again, it's probably best used in dialogue, as it gives an impression of how the characters are speaking. And it often comes with that sense of speed. Incidentally, the dash between the M and the dash is a hyphen, which is shorter and used to connect two words. You may want to look up the difference between M dash, N dash and hyphen, but with handwriting it really doesn't matter so much. And so to another example. When she had parked, she wearily got from the car, relieved to be able to stretch her legs. All day on the road from 8 in the morning on. An all-night drugstore could be made out not far down the sidewalk. Hands in the pockets of her coat, she walked that way, and soon she was shut up in the privacy of the phone booth, asking the operator for Cheyenne information. Their phone, thank God, was listed. She put in the quarters and the operator rang. "Hello?" a woman's voice sounded presently. A vigorous, rather pleasant younger woman's voice, a woman no doubt about her own age. "Mrs. Abdenson," Juliana said. "May I talk to Mr. Abdenson?" No doubt you spotted the M dashes here, a pair of them. And in this case, they're acting like commas or brackets, separating out that extra unnecessary information. Their phone, comma, thank God, comma, was listed. Could have been written. I don't know, but to me, the use of these dashes instead creates some sort of immediacy. Brackets are an alternative, but they're quite dry and formal, perhaps better used for academic works. Commas themselves are just dull. Besides, there are already plenty of commas above. These dashes add an emphasis to the utterance, thank God, in this passage, which again shows us what the character is feeling very, very neatly. Another interesting thing here is the use of the semicolon and commas together. In the first sentence, a comma is used to add information. Both are two-clause sentences. Then comes a much longer sentence, building up to that action and a feeling of relief. 5 clauses, which is far too long to be separated by commas alone, so a semicolon has been used for brevity and for variety, without putting in that full stop. I wouldn't necessarily recommend you guys doing this too much, though. After the phone is answered, there is another multiple clause sentence which uses commas and a semicolon. In the second case, the semicolon introduces extra information. It could have been a colon or a dash. Philip K. Dick, for reasons of his own, decided on a semicolon. But really, anything would have been better than another comma. Even a full stop with the words "it was" added would have been better. See, I told you this was easy. Just punctuate and avoid too many commas. And that leads us to our last tip, the use of paragraphs. Now, this isn't strictly punctuation, but the good use of paragraphs can go a long way in the exam. I don't think you can read this particularly, but you can see in these two examples how the paragraphs have been used. That first one, with a line through it, they've been used boringly. Is that a word? I don't know. Anyway, it's boring. Now, there's definitely a place for big blocks of text, but your GCSE exam is not one of them. The second picture there, without the line through it, is a much better example to follow. Again, you probably can't read it, but you can see that the shape is far more interesting. Let's have a look at the end of that page. Now, this is from a book called Cirque du Freak by Darren Shan. I leaned forward quickly for a better view. It was a dark night, and at first I couldn't see who was down there. But then the person stepped forward, and all was revealed. First, I saw his wrinkly hands holding the cage. Then his long red clothes. Then his cropped orange hair. Then his long ugly scar. And finally, his sharp toothy grin. It was Mr. Crepsley, the vampire, and he was smiling up at me. Now, this is from the bottom of the page and from the end of a chapter. And this would be something that you can do at the end of your story to deliberately impact the reader. Notice that the top paragraph here was 3 sentences, all about the same kind of length. Then there are 5, and then 2 short ones, and then 1. And that in itself is pretty cool. The sentence in that middle paragraph goes first, then, and finally. And that is also pretty cool. This builds a sense of tension all by itself. We're leading towards some sort of a climax, which is exactly what it does. I know you can copy this kind of thing. It works. Another example. Similar thing, this time from The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. With one eye open, one still in a dream, the book thief, also known as Liesl Memminger, could see without question that her younger brother Werner was now sideways and dead. His blue eyes stared at the floor, seeing nothing. Notice the use of dashes in place of brackets or commas. That information isn't needed, but it's there. And it follows information that also isn't needed and is marked off by commas. It's so much more elegant than simply using 4 commas, don't you think? It also makes it easier to read. And again, perhaps gives this sense of some sort of intimacy. So, there you have it. Some simple ways of making your writing have more of an impact, including looking more attractive, using the kind of visual techniques that poets often use. And there's nothing wrong with making your work look visually attractive for the examiner. So, the next time you're reading your favourite book, keep an eye out for these simple techniques. They're not hard to use, and they can have a huge impact on your writing, not to mention your grades. Good luck.